Hello, and welcome to Greek the Week. I am Mona Duncan, your moderator, and this program is about looking at living in the now, because this is the only moment that's at our disposal, and also realizing that things happen that we can learn a lesson from. And so, with this being a new year, we're going to be talking about today how can 2023 be different than 2022 or years prior to that. And so it's kind of like exercising a muscle, whether that muscle is a muscle on the body, the more you exercise it and build it up and strengthen it, um, the stronger it becomes and the more strength. Well, the same thing is true with our muscle, using a using the same word, but in a different meaning. Our muscle of gratitude, our muscle of thankfulness, our muscle of looking at things as becoming possible. Well, what if, what if? So whenever we have made a commitment to someone that we would do something for them, then we are committed to, and we want to carry that out and make sure that we have done what we said we would do, that we would keep our word. Well, the thing is true with the principles of life. You need to be true to yourself, just like you would make a commitment to someone else and would keep it. Well, also make a commitment to you and keep it. And so we're in the second week of the new year. So the question is, what would make you happy right now? What would make you happy right now? Write it down, put it in the chat, or whenever we get to the live interaction, we'll talk about it. What would make you happy right now? Well, I want you to note that the word make is an outside force. Something to make you happy is that outside force, that there's something out here that must interact. So, but the thing of it is that the more I realize and become aware of the fact that each one of us in this whole entire universe has been given a free will, and that we can utilize the psychology of choice theory, that everything we do is our own choice. Nothing makes us do anything. Now, it can kind of seem that way because sometimes we think, well, if this happens, then this has to happen. But because this happens, this does not have to happen. Because there are things that are stimulators, yes, but those stimulators do not have control over us unless we submit to it or unless we align with it. And I think I've used this before, but I want to use it again in the prison system and talking with people about the fact that we make our own decisions. And this guy said, "Oh, I don't know, Miss Mona." Said whenever that marshal had me down handcuffed on the floor, I certainly didn't think that I was making a decision and that I had a choice. So I asked him to stop and to really think. When you were there, you were tackled, you had your hands behind you, there someone, maybe even others, were helping to keep you confined. Did you have an insight? Did you begin to change your mind? Oh, I have seen the error of my way. And he admitted the fact that no, it had not. I said, well, were you controlled or were you confined? Because people can do things to us that definitely affect us, but the overall effect of it has to do with our choice. So researchers tells us that there are two kinds of happiness. There is the happiness that is the immediate, the right now, that it looks good, it feels good, it's tantalizing. It's kind of a mock happiness. It's something that, oh, that's nice, I like it, I want more of it. But then there is another type of happiness that is genuine. And that is whenever we can continually seek for meaning, to see, or to just be happy for no reason. Sometimes you can look around, whether it is climate, or whether it is people, or whether it is situations, or whether it is finances that you thought about. There's nothing happy about this, but we can choose to be happy for no reason, just to be happy, because to be thankful. It goes back up to exercising that muscle of not only happiness, but of gratitude and thankfulness. And so to me, looking at the new year kind of helps us to see the truth of how life is cyclical, because there is a history that backs up the why of the cycle of the new year. I mean, there's only 12 months in the year, and when those 12 months are out, then we have a new one, and it's the time for celebration. And so there's the history of the beginning of calendars and the essence, but it's looking at the essence of cycles, of anything that matters. It is encompassing and incorporating a much broader scope. There are cycles from the small to the large. You know, we can look at the cycle of 3 meals a day, or a day of waking and sleeping, or a week that has 7 days in it, or we can look at the 12 months and the 365 days in the years that, you know, they just keep going around. The cycle of brushing your teeth, the cycle of doing your taxes, the cycle of just a lot of things, you know, that are cyclical. That these cycles, do they unfold as patterns that just keep happening again and again and again? Or do we consciously wake up and realize that today is a new day? This 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whichever time zone you're in, is a new moment. It's a new day. It's a new time. So will the cycles in your life going into 2023, will they be new and awakening, or will they be the same old? Will we sleep through another year, or will we awaken? What allows our next idea? What allows us to change? Well, as the old year ends, there's a lot of traditions that go along with it. It begins with the countdown to the dawn of a new day, and then the dropping of the ball and people cheering. And whether it's on the East Coast or the West Coast, you know, eventually it'll get to the West Coast or what other part of the universe it's in. So as we begin to change our ideas and change our words and change our intentions, that's when we can change our life. Why? Because life in and of itself is relational. Life relates to us as we relate to life. Situations relate to us as we relate to situations. It's cyclical. Life is interpersonal. So what are you asking for in 2023? Or what are you wanting in 2023? Imagine, is there some things that you kind of sort of want to hang on to and look forward to? Or is there some things that you're afraid to touch it? That you don't dare begin to explore the fact that maybe I could do that? Are you afraid to make some resolutions because you failed so much in the past? Well, back in 1995, there was a Garfield cartoon in the paper that resonates with me again and again and again every year. And in the cartoon, it had John, the owner of Garfield, and he is waking Garfield up from his deep sleep. And he's telling him to get up, that this is a new day, it's a new year, it's a new challenge, and that, you know, we've got things to do. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to wake up, get up. And he goes over and he opens the door. It's a new year, a new day, and he opens the door, and all of a sudden, he has mistakenly opened a closet door instead of the door to go out into the universe to change everything. And everything falls out, and he is on the floor, and mops and buckets and things have fallen on him. And old wise Garfield looks over there and he says, New day, new year, same John. And so I, I reflect on that because as much as we want to think a new year is kind of magical, and there is an element to it. The thing of it is the change must be within. Change is an inside job. It may be a new day, a new year, a new challenge, but if we stay the same, then things will remain the same. And so it may be a new job, it may be a new marriage, it may be a new city, a new this, a new that. But unless we work on the inside character qualities, things will stay the same or they will become the same as we follow along with the pattern that we've been so used to. So, seeing where we are now and seeing who we are now and seeing what we are now is one of the most challenging steps in whether or not to go forward and to be who we really want to be. Michael Berg is the one who wrote the book, The Secret. And in there, he tells of an incident between he and his younger brother. And his younger brother, and although he has reflected on it, anyway, there was only one piece of gum, and so they both wanted it. But he chose to give it to his younger brother, not make a big to do about it or anything, not proclaim himself as being the generous big brother. He just chose to give his younger brother the one stick of gum. And reflecting on it many times in his life, as he looked back to the fact that he put his brother above his own self, it helped him to see that he was giving, that he was leaving behind the restrictions of human nature. And that was in quote, that he was realizing that he was leaving behind the restrictions of human nature. That it's human nature to want what you want, to see what you see, to think what you think. And he, even at that young age, he began to develop that he was looking more out for someone else than he was for himself. Not that he was harmed in any way, but anyway, I was talking with a student recently that had access to a job opportunity during the spring breaks, not during the break, but during yeah, anyway. And he talked about how much he really enjoyed it and how much he learned and how great it was, and that but he wasn't real sure. So, I asked, well, you're gonna apply for that same position again this coming year? And it was a little reticent there. Well, I'm not real sure because there had been some kind of critiquing that had been less than favorable. And so he wasn't sure that he was going to go back and tackle the same thing, applying for the same position. But he did qualify the fact, yes, I'm going to make an application for the same organization, just in a different venue. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, I saw this person again, and I said, well, what about it? Have you decided? Are you going to stay where you were in applying for this position over the summer, or are you going to go for another position? And he said, well, I've really been thinking about it. I've been thinking about how that there are so many ways that I can I'm going to go back and I have already applied for the same position that I went to the last 2 years. And I've been thinking about some ways that I can interact with the teams there to help them in ways that hadn't been thought of before or that hadn't been used before. And he was thinking about ways that some ideas and so forth that he could share with the other counselors and things like that. And I applauded him for his self-evaluating skills, that he had begun to, instead of thinking back on those critiquings that had been less than favorable, But I'm here to tell you they weren't negative. They were just saying some things you could do a little bit better. And to realize that as he began to think to himself, and what can I do to improve those things or to improve me? To see the words I use, that is self-evaluating of how can, and so I applauded him that he was willing to leave behind the restrictions of human nature, that says, no, I'll do it my way. So I want to pull up the screen here because I have a couple of things I want to talk with you. How can we be different in 2023? Well, it's up to us. It is up to us. It's you. Things can be different depending on you and your choices, your thoughts, and your actions. Change depends on receiving and on giving. But also, just like a while ago, we noted that we cannot, what will make you happy? It's whether or not we decide to be. Note that receiving precedes the giving or the being, because we are not self-made individuals. We absolutely cannot give out of an empty basket. And we have received so much stuff from others, from that sometimes it's hard to really understand that. We can never, if we give anything, it's because we received it prior to giving it. Anyway, so here are some thoughts on change. Change is the only thing that is permanent. I mean, just stop and think about that. Things are always constantly changing. Again, whether it's the weather or the time, or things are just constantly changing. So change is permanent, and we might as well get used to it. Change is awkward. Change can seem difficult because there may be a lot of legitimacy to that and it being different. And so therefore making different statements and different attitudes and so forth can be quite concerning. Change becomes easier once we get over the fear of changing, that I can't do it, I'm not up to it. Change is easier once we see a reason for change. How could I benefit by making a change in this particular area of thinking different thoughts and having a different attitude? Change is risky, but it can well be worth the risk, because how would we know if we don't try it out? Change is accomplished through leaving behind the restrictions of human nature. It's realizing that I have a free will and I have control over everything being my way. Some more thoughts. Change is incremental, but it does not have to take forever. Change is slow, and learning new things sometimes does take some time, but it doesn't have to take forever. Change does not come by knowledge, but by action. Now, maybe the knowledge may be there to start with, but it's not going to do anything if we just know it. We have to actually act upon it. And in the acting upon it, it starts in a real nascent way of looking at the fact of, well, what if? What if I could do that? What if that would make an appreciable change? Number 9, change is growth. How many times do you run into someone that you haven't seen in a while and you can see the change in them, and whether that growth is in a lot of different ways, whether I know in my life, the people maybe even growing older, but it is growth. To resist change makes growing difficult, if not impossible. If we become resistant to it, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to know about it, I don't want to change, we kind of get stuck. Change is often painful. It's often necessary. change the pictures in your mind. As we begin to change it, that we're going to look here anyway. And then change is fun once you receive enough that you can change. So, intellect, emotions, and decisions. True change comes with an adjustment in the way we think, in the way we feel, and in the way we do things. So, our intellect, and it is with our intellect, it is with our mind, it is with our thinking that we reason, that we weigh, that we consider, and that we try to understand the issues of life. It is with our emotions that we feel the issues of life. And there's a big spectrum there: joy, sorrow, pride, shame. And there's a lot more things that we could add to it, all of those different emotions that may be a part of change. And then decisions. It is through our decisions that we decide what we're going to do. It is through the decisions that we say yes or no to opportunities, that we say yes or no to temptations, that we say yes or no to an action. So coming to the end of, I love this. I ran across this the other day, and I just think this is so powerful. It was by author Willis Isaacson. And he said, vision without execution is hallucination. Well, that was real powerful. So what about you? Think 2023 can be different in appreciable ways? Well, I think they can. And I think that I appreciate your being here. And so many blessings.